Hi, and welcome to the training from pre-K to kindergarten ready, bridging the gap in early childhood mathematics. This is the first of three parts of this training, and it'll be focused on mathematics for the early childhood classroom. Today, three of our learning objectives are going to be number one, being able to describe what vertical alignment is and relating it to pre-K guidelines and kindergarten TEKS. Two, being able to identify and justify high leverage guidelines. And three, be able to create rigorous CRA, which means concrete, representational, and abstract-based lessons for the pre-K mathematics classroom. Throughout this training, we're going to be talking about a lot of material for pre-K mathematics. For this section, the PowerPoint is lengthy, so we're going to go through it quite quickly, but feel free to save it and review it as you need. You can listen to this recording and pause as you go throughout, or do it independently, just look at the PowerPoint that's inside Google Classroom as well to get a good, strong feeling about it. First, we're going to be talking about planning with the end in mind, vertical alignment. So this is where we're going to be able to describe vertical alignment and relate it to the pre-K guidelines in classroom. Vertical alignment is essentially planning with the end in mind. It's found within a coherent curriculum that is something that is well organized and purposefully designed, free of academic gaps and needless repetitions from grade levels to grade levels, aligned across lessons, courses, subjects, and grade levels, and is coherent from one grade to the next. For education, it's important that we vertically align because content learned in one lesson or grade level is purposefully structured and logically sequenced so that students are learning the knowledge and skills that will progressively prepare them for more challenging higher level work in the next lesson or grade level. So what we do in kindergarten builds into what we do in first grade. What we do in first grade builds into what we do in second grade. The TEKS are scaffolded up and add a little bit more rigor and content complexity as you go throughout. And so vertically aligning means that we understand where we are in this grade level and how it builds to the next, and understand where we are in this grade level and where we were building from in the previous grade level. How to vertically align? Well, you can begin with the standard and always begin with the standard in your current grade level, and then you can work forward and building up towards upper grade levels, or you can build backwards and work your way down. So you can build forward, link and see how the next standard builds upon the current standards in the next grade level, or again build backward, link and see where the slightly more foundational skills from the previous grade level were and how you got to where you are right now. And as always, we're going to focus on the slightly varied depth of the skill and the attached verb. For us, building or vertically aligning going forward, we're going to start with standard, and for us, we're going to be working in pre-K. It's important for us to know the depth and complexity level of what we're doing in pre-K as it pertains to the next grade level. So if we're looking right here, we're going to link and see how the next standard builds upon in the next grade level. And again, we're going to be focusing on the slightly varied skills and verbs attached. So in pre-K, we're looking at VE1, child sorts objects of the same and different. So in kindergarten, we can see that the TEKS that build from that build forward, vertical line forward, in kindergarten are K2G and K2H. So compare objects and then use comparative language. So then in grade 1, we have 1-2E, 1-2F, 1-2G. Use place value to compare, order whole numbers represent the comparison. And then we can keep going forward to grade 2 and grade 3 and go all the way up to algebra if we like. But the whole purpose of vertically aligning, you start with the TEK, or for us, guideline in pre-K, see what we need to learn and teach our kids as it builds up into the next grade level. We don't necessarily want to overlap and cover what the next grade level is working on because that wouldn't be coherent, that'd be redundant. What we want to do is build right up to that level, that threshold, so that when they get to kindergarten, they have all the prerequisite skills in pre-K to be successful in the next grade. So we're going to understand completely the guidelines and skills we are covering right now, not go into kindergarten, but get right to that level so that when they do go to the next grade level, the kids are set and primed to be successful in that next level of rigor. Now this is going forward. We can also build in vertical line going backwards. So if we're looking at grade 2, again, we're going to begin with the standard, and we're going to be working backwards to see how it builds or how it built up slightly different from previously. So in second grade, 2D, use place value to compare and order. Well, we know that in second grade, students go up to 1200 or 1200. If we go backward to first grade, they built up to 120, again, the comparative language and symbols. We go back to kindergarten, they built up to 20 and they compare those objects, big, small, and we go all the way back to pre-K, again, they're sorting objects. The verbs and the definitions of what they're doing aren't exactly the same, but we can use our expertise in knowing, um, comparing objects, same and different, build into the next skills. And so again, we can go forward, starting with the lowest grade level and build up, or we can go backwards, starting with a high grade level and building backwards. The next portion of our learning right now is going to be high leverage guidelines and TEKs. And so again, we're going to be identifying and justifying what we view as high leverage pre-K guidelines. Before we get started, let's understand what they are. So high leverage means guidelines or TEKs that serve as the focus of research and or planning. They are skills that when learned positively impact other standards, and it's not one piece of content, but essentially many building blocks or foundational skills. Now, the argument can be made that every TEK taught for pre-K, every guideline is high leverage, but there are some that are a bit more foundational than others. Some TEKs and some guidelines that serve to build larger, more TEKs in the next grade level. And so when we discuss high leverage, those are the ones that we're talking about that are most foundational that kids need to master as they build into many more TEKs going forward. And so for us right now, we can look at VA2, child uses words to rote count from 1 to 30. And we can see in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade how those TEKs build upon each other. If we keep going to the pre-K guidelines, the TEA gives us many domains. And so for us, we can just call pre-K all these domains as being the main high leverage ones. So subitizing, counting in a one-to-one fashion, determining which set is larger or smaller, counting on, making close number comparisons, and number after equals one more. So within the mathematics domain, we can say high leverage for pre-K could be those counting skills. Again, showing basic counting readiness and counting by nonverbal and verbal means. You can see VA1 all the way down to VA9 are all the different areas of that high leverage domain. So for us right now, we're going to say that counting skills would be a high leverage domain. Next, we can see the adding to and taking away, the very basic informal and formal strategies that start kids to understand the addition subtraction. We have VB1 all the way down to VB3. Again, that's adding to and taking away. A third high leverage domain for pre-K would be geometry and spatial sense skills. And again, that's children recognizing, describing, and naming attributes as shapes. This builds all the way up into geometry, especially in 4th and 5th grade, which is one of those areas that kids miss most in TEKs. And then in geometry and a little bit of algebra into high school. Going forward, we have another high leverage domain, that would be the measurement skills. And so for pre-K age children, they're going to describe and demonstrate the attributes of persons and objects such as length, area, capacity, or weight. We have 4 domains, or 4 pre-K guidelines right there for it. Another area would be classification and patterns skills. And so for pre-K kids, they're going to be sorting and classifying objects using one or more attributes. They begin to use these attributes of objects to duplicate and create patterns. And very much so, it builds into the algebraic thinking, which is the most foundational kind of grade level we have for kids. Everything we do in pre-K to 8th grade build our kids into being ready for algebra. Now that we've covered vertical alignment, and high leverage, we're going to build and work into concrete representation and abstract aligned lessons and activities. And so for many of you, when we say CRA, this is what we mean. So concrete models of pre-K math. Concepts introduced through hands-on experiences with manipulatives and are necessary for kids to first think in those concrete terms before they start doing things abstractly. So when we're thinking of concrete representation and abstract, concrete is the first introduction to it. And very much so, it's hands-on manipulatives, concrete. So every lesson that you're teaching your kids need to have some aspect of some concrete modality, some manipulative, some physical manipulation, and tactile interaction with material. When kids start getting proficient with manipulating the objects physically, then we can start moving into that picture representational mode of pre-K math. And here it's when students start to visualize the concepts and represent it pictorially through things like number bonds or bar models. It's very much that mental image we see in our head on paper. And this mode of thinking assists children in dissecting and challenging word problems and to help develop that logical thinking. So in the trajectory, the kids first are introduced in using something concrete, tangible, Tactile, that's the C. After they start doing things manipulatively and they can understand it, then they move to representational, and that's making pictures of some sorts. Very much kind of a 2D dimensional thing. That last stage is very abstract, and that is all in the head, kind of mental. So here students only use abstract numbers and symbols when they have enough context to understand what they mean. The true abstract thinking comes from without using concrete skills or pictures, which again is one of those skills required by algebra, trig, and calculus later on. So again, the kids start with manipulating something physically. Once they have the physical means to manipulate that object or the understanding, we move into the representational, and that is then thinking in their head kind of a picture of things and seeing on paper. Once they can manipulate and they can visualize, well, then they can start thinking abstractly about it. That's very much necessary for all mathematics. Now, the final mathematics deliverable for this activity is going to be for you, the teacher, to create one vertically aligned CRA-based example for positional words. And so that for us is VC3, the PreK guideline that appears in the fifth 6-week sequence. Again, VC3 is provided in the next couple of slides, both English and Spanish, so you can see exactly what it is. And in the Google Classroom, there is always an example to guide you in your creation of this final deliverable. Remember, for full credit in this course, you must post all deliverables and questions in all sections for this course. Doing one or more and not doing all portions will not get you partial credit. You need to finish and complete every piece. So again, the final mathematics deliverable is going to be for you using the VC3 PreK guideline for positional words. You are going to vertically align that from PreK to kindergarten and first grade. Use those seeks where appropriate. From there, you're going to create examples of those. And what I mean for examples, I want to see concrete, representational, and abstract portions of it just for the PreK. When you're done with that, you're going to submit your final document in the Google Classroom, and your title of your document is going to be your first name dot last name at schoolname dot school location, such as john.reed at southtimeout.166. The PreK guidelines you're going to be covering are going to be VC3, location of objects, positional words. And here are examples of both of those. In just a moment, I'm going to cut from this screen and go to the Google Classroom to show you where the example is and to describe and explain the example really briefly. And again, this training for the high leverage, the vertical alignment, and CRA for PreK math has gone really quickly, so feel free to pause and review this presentation over and over if you need to, or just listen to it without the word and get a good understanding of it. So now I'm going to show you the final deliverable example for you to turn in. So when you go to the Google Classroom, we're going to go to classwork, and in the same section that you found this presentation in PowerPoint, we're going to be looking at the other documents within that class. So if we scroll down, we can go to see why we need vertical alignment. Here's an article for you to read to get a good understanding, some more vertical alignment. We have linked to the TEA website that has TEKS and other documents to help you vertically align. We have some more understandings about how to identify high leverage TEKS. We have another article for you to use to understand the CRA method of instruction. There's a video right here for you for the CRA method instruction, and then a link and the final deliverable. Here is where you're going to find the final deliverable that I want you to be using to guide you in your creation of that document. So let's go ahead and click that. So once you find and locate the final deliverable, remember, in this you're going to locate the positional words. I've already done that for you. Then you're going to vertically align the positional words in PreK to the TEKS in kindergarten and then the TEKS in first grade. After you've identified those vertical alignment portions, you're then going to create those examples for CRA. For this one, we create an example for VC4, which is flip, slide, and turn shapes to demonstrate that regardless of shape and pattern and orientation, the shape remains the same. So here we have the PreK guidelines. We're going ahead and vertically align. So here is the PreK guideline. Here are all the possible kindergarten TEKS that build from it going forward, all the possible first grade TEKS that build from the kindergarten, and then on the side I have explanations and discussions about exactly what the differences are. So I notice and I note from PreK to K we do this, from K to 1 we do that, and then I identify the verbs that are a bit different for those TEKS. So go ahead and do that. Additionally, after you